Hi, everyone. I'm attorney Donna DiMaggio Berger, and this is Take It to the Board, where we speak condo and HOA. Welcome back to our conversation with Broward County Property Appraiser, Marty Kiar.
Okay.
So we're back to homestead. Let's talk about portability a little bit. So how does the Save Our Home Amendment to the Florida Constitution work in terms of transporting the homestead benefits from one residence to a new one that you purchase?
I absolutely love portability. Portability was enacted in 2008. It was put in the Constitution by the voters of Florida in 2008. It really gave people the opportunity to move from one home into another home and not be taxed out of that home. And here's the way it worked. When you bought your home and it was your primary residence, you filed for homestead. And so then what occurred is every year thereafter, the value of your tax lien could not go up more than a maximum of 3%. So over time, your market value kept going up while your assessed value stayed capped. You had all this value in between your market value and your assessed value you weren't paying taxes on. If you decide that you want to buy and move to another home of equal or greater value, you take whatever difference that is between your market value and your assessed value with you to your new property and not pay taxes on it. If you buy a home of lower value, you take a big percentage of it and it can still save you thousands of dollars a year in your property taxes. Now you can port up to $500,000 of value if you've accumulated up to that much, and you must use it within 3 tax years. And a tax year for our office starts on January 1st. So if somebody sold their home right now, so they would have relinquished their homestead, they would have had to have their new homestead in 2 years and basically 4 months to be able to apply for portability.
And it's a huge savings because especially in this market where the values keep rising, and especially if you're a long-term, like empty nesters, people who have raised their families, they've been in the big home, and now maybe they want to downsize to a townhouse or a condo unit, and this is designed just for that purpose.
It's true. I'll give you a good example of empty nesters where this really puts into perspective how it helps. And by the way, you can use it anywhere in the state of Florida. You can use it as many times as you want. The key is you can only have one homestead per family unit. So it's going from one homestead to another homestead. But let me give you a real world example. So there was a couple that lived in the city of Weston. They bought their home in Weston Hills, which is a higher end community in Weston, when Weston Hills was built. There was this big home on the golf course. Maybe they bought it for $200,000-$300,000, something like that. Fast forward a few decades. It's been their homestead. So the value they were taxed on, their assessed value has been capped, but their market value kept going way up. And now they're empty nesters. Their kids went to Cypress Bay High School, then to Florida, University of Florida. Now they're out of the house. And you have this married couple in this big home, and they really just wanted to move to downtown Fort Lauderdale, but they were afraid they couldn't afford the taxes. So we looked at their property. The assessed value of their property, because it's been homesteaded for so long, was right about $400,000. But the market value was about $900,000. So they had $500,000 of value they weren't paying taxes on. What they did was they sold their property there and they bought a condo in downtown Fort Lauderdale for right about $900,000. And we were able to take their full $500,000 of value from their Weston home, that was the difference between the 900 and the 400, to their new home in Fort Lauderdale, which dropped their assessed value to about $400,000. So their taxes in Fort Lauderdale in their new condo are not much different than they were in Weston. They could have afforded to live. That is how cool portability is. It is really wonderful. It can help you tremendously. I'm another good example. You know what? I lived in a townhouse in the town of Davie with my wife. And when we first bought it, it was like a palace. Then we had 2 daughters, a dog, and 2 cats, and it became really crowded. And we wanted to find a single family home. And so then in 2016, we found a pretty home in Plantation that was perfect for our family. And I was able to port about, I think, $69,000 to $70,000 of value that I wasn't paying taxes on. And that really helped us to be able to afford our monthly payment. So portability is a really wonderful program that can really give you the opportunity to move to another home.
So my husband cannot use this as an excuse for failing to downsize and move east. But let me take you an example of the empty nesters. I'm going to give it a dark twist. They're empty nesters. They decide they no longer like each other. They get divorced. Who gets to transport the homestead exemption?
See, I'm so glad you asked the legal question because I can say it depends again. So it all depends. Now, here's what I always recommend to people. If you're getting divorced, the first thing that really you should do is in the marital settlement agreement, address the Save Our Homes value of the property. Because remember, this is thousands of dollars. And the court could basically say, okay, each of the former spouses each get 50% of whatever was accumulated. Now, if it doesn't happen, then here's the way the law works. Let's say the marital home is not sold. And let's use the wife as an example. The wife keeps the marital home. And what occurs then, all that value stays with the marital home. So the husband, he may have got another property, but he is not entitled to that value, to any of that Save Our Homes value. It stays with the property. Now, if the property sold, technically...
It depends on what your agreement says, I suppose.
It's true. If the agreement doesn't address it and the property sold, Technically, it's supposed to be first come, first serve. So let's say the husband runs in and says, I want all the value. You have to give it to him. The wife does, you have to give it to her. But we always try to say, hey, listen, would you guys want 50% each? So you never know. But the best thing to do is make sure it is addressed in the marital settlement agreement, because that'll take care of the entire thing.
You are such a peacemaker, Marty.
Thank
but
you.
we're talking about portability along those lines. I know you've said throughout this entire episode that most people want you to lower their property taxes. But do you ever have people say, you know what? I think you've undervalued. We've done all these improvements on the home. We want you to increase the value. And maybe they're doing that because maybe they're looking down the road to portability.
Absolutely. It happens all the time. And I'll tell you why. So basically, if you are a homesteaded property owner, again, the value you're taxing cannot go up more than 3%. So right now in Broward County, market values are skyrocketing. If you're an existing homesteaded property owner, you like that because the value you're taxed on can't go more than 3%, even though your market value may go up 20, 30, 40, 50%. So that gives you more portability value that you can move. People who are homesteaded will come in and say, they'll go, Marty, my property value is too low. These other sales that are similar to mine sold for much more, but you have it too low. I want to see it increased. And they want it increased because it's not going to affect their taxes because it would not make their assessed values capped. And so we'll look at it. And if there's data they can provide us that shows us that their market value should be increased, we always will as well. And that doesn't increase the amount of money they pay taxes on because that's capped, but it does give them a bigger benefit in case they want to move. That's more value they can bring with them and not pay taxes on at their other home. So it does happen all the time. And people even petition the Value Adjustment Board to do that as well.
Is your office ever proactive about confirming improvements made to a property, like in terms of checking, to see notices of commencement recorded? Or are you more passive in terms of waiting for the homeowner to say, I've made these improvements?
We're very aggressive. And I'll tell you why. What we do, and here's the difference. Now, here's what everybody needs to understand. Again, we're not fee appraisers, we're mass appraisers. We look at all the permits that are being pulled, and the cities, we have relationships with all 31 cities, and all the cities provide us every single week the permits that have been pulled. And if there is a permit that deals with renovations to the inside of the property, it's not making the property bigger, it's basically making the kitchen better or making the bathroom better, whatever it is, we disregard that. We don't care about that. That is nothing that's going to affect the value of your property. The permits that we care about are the ones where it's making the footprint of the home bigger, or it's adding a garage, or it's putting a pool in. Things of that nature we're going to use to determine the assessed value of the property. What we do is our office actually physically inspects every single property once every 4 years. All throughout the year, we're actually looking at satellite imagery at the properties. And what we do is we get, of course, the permits that are pulled from all the different cities. And our staff is constantly out there watching the properties as additions are added onto it. So we make sure we catch all the value. And again, it's not about making people pay more on taxes. It's really just ensuring that people pay their fair share of property taxes.
Right.
So
that the assessed value matches the reality of what that property looks like, which is a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you, Marty, in a lot of our multifamily buildings, we will over the years see people buy adjacent units and combine them. So how do you handle that in terms of assessing value? Does it matter if they've combined them but kept separate kitchens, or tell me how that works?
It happens all the time. People will definitely combine their units for a number of different purposes. Let me tell you kind of what usually happens. Usually, if the condo association allows it, the first condominium unit owner is homesteaded. That's their homesteaded property. Then maybe they buy the property next door. They combine it and they want to make the entire thing their homestead. They can absolutely do that. But here's how it works. On the initial value of the property, you've accumulated a lot of Save Our Homes value they don't pay tax on. That stays the same. The new property is basically put on at market value, and then it gets the 3% cap. It's very similar to if somebody adds an addition to their home. Let's say they add 1,000 square feet addition to their house. What occurs, the home itself has had the homestead exemption for a long time and has a Save Our Homes cap, that stays right where it is. But the new structure goes on at market value, and then afterwards gets the benefit of the 3% cap. Same for non-homestead property that has the benefit of the 10% cap.
Oh, that's good to know. So there's a lot of cranes in Broward County. There's a lot of construction going on. We've talked about a lot about we're going to see terminations. We're going to see new buildings going up. How does your office evaluate and assess the value for new construction? Because I know there's always this perception out there that the biggest bite of the apple is that first bite when the unit is built. Is that an accurate perception?
It depends. But I will say this though. So the way that we determine the value of new construction is, was the property allowed to be utilized for its intended use on January 1st of the tax year? That means a few things. Has a CO been issued for that property, certificate of occupancy? Have the plumbing final, the electrical final, have those been signed off on? What occurs is we look at January 1st, and if the property can be utilized for its intended purpose, it's going to go on the tax roll. If not, you're basically for that year just going to get taxed as if it is vacant land. So a good example is, let's say somebody's building a single family home. If their home is CO'd and all those finals are signed off on, the electrical, mechanical, and the plumbing, before January 1st, let's say they're signed off on December 31st, January 1st, it's perfect. And so your November tax bill is going to reflect the whole property with the structure because it was signed off on prior to January 1st. Same scenario. Let's say January 2nd is when the CO is issued and those three finals are signed off. Because it wasn't on January 1st, your November tax bill will be as if it was vacant land. So that's something that people should always think about. And I'll tell you, there is a lot of new construction out there. This year in Broward County, we put on more than $3 billion of new construction, and Fort Lauderdale alone put on about $1.7 billion of new construction, which is pretty amazing, the amount of new construction that is happening throughout Broward County.
We didn't even talk about the agricultural exemption. So can somebody throw a few cows on their lot and have it apply?
Here's the key. We actually have, if I remember, I might be a little off on my number, but between 2,500 and 3,000 farms actually in Broward County. That's because they have an agricultural classification. And an agricultural classification can be very, very valuable. They can save people a lot of money in their property taxes, many thousands of dollars. And the reason being is because you want agriculture. The legislature has determined it wanted to encourage people to have agriculture. It wanted to have maybe less development. It wanted more farmers to be able to operate and afford to have their properties. And so the agricultural classification is awesome. But here's the key. It's got to be an agricultural business. So what occurs is if somebody has a property and they throw, like you said, some chickens on there or some horses or maybe a couple cows, they can't have an agricultural classification. They have to show it's actually a business. They show us tax returns, a business plan, all kinds of different things that we have to see. Now, you don't have to make money on it, but you have to show you're attempting to make a profit on it. So that's the key. So let's say, for example, that same thing with the cows, you have to show that those cows are there for agricultural business. Or if you have horses on your property, maybe you have a horse breeding business. Or if you have a nursery on the property, you have to show us these are actually the sales of the plants. What we're doing here is we're making sure that the ground is ready to be prepped so we can sell everything.
What about the easiest livestock? Some bees, and I'm going to sell some honey.
So that's a big issue. And there's actually a disagreement as to how to assess that. There are people, if you have bees, you can argue that maybe you're entitled to an agricultural classification if you sell the honey. But the key is, how big of a exemption do you get? Now, the thing is, you can only get an agricultural classification on the portion of the property that's being utilized for your agricultural business. So if you look at where the bees are, they're usually in the hive. And so an argument should be made that that should be the only area where they should get the classification.
So that could be like 5 square feet, Marty.
It could be. So it could be very small. But the other argument, though, that a lot of the people that do this is they argue that, well, no, maybe it should be bigger, because the bees have to pollinate, they go over here, they fly all over the place. And so a lot of it can be subjective. And so what we do is, we contact the state of Florida. We have our team learn as much as they possibly can, for example, about bee farming. We bring in experts. And at the end of the day, you try to give people what you believe legally they should be entitled to. So it all depends.
I want to switch gears a little bit. We talked about the land. Let's talk about the water. So I read, a couple of years back, I don't know if you remember this story, Marty, but there was an individual who was going around and he was acquiring submerged land leases, and the adjacent landowners were unaware. And then he would ask them for money. So you got to get your docks off this water because I have the underlying submerged land lease. Does your office get involved at all with regard to submerged land leases?
So with regard to that issue, we were involved. And I'll tell you what occurred. I don't want to use the gentleman's name, but I'll tell you what happened. One day in our office, we got a order from the Broward County Circuit Courts. And the order was requiring us to put all this property in the name of this other person. And we were looking at what they were requiring us to do. And it was the backs of people's homes, even went through somebody's swimming pool. Yeah. It was all the water underneath their docks in the Hillsborough Inlet. It was a whole lot of other land underneath there. I think there was the Coast Guard's property. Land belonged to Broward County and Pompano. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, something is not right here. So what we did was we decided to do a couple things. I refused to put it in his name because I wanted the judge to be able to clarify it to us. And so we actually had our lawyers file a motion for clarification with the judge. And we basically said, Judge, I know you've ordered us to put this in this other person's name, but this is where this property actually looks like it goes through. And all these other homeowners and taxing authorities, none of them were notified about this. Can you clarify, is this really what you want us to do? And then what we did as well was we sent letters to every single one of the homeowners that was affected by it. And all of those homeowners, they themselves brought their own lawsuit. And there's ongoing litigation between themselves and the person that wanted them to do that. But his argument is a submerged lands argument. Basically, at one time, the land under there was not underwater and it was owned by corporations. And those corporations are defunct. And from my understanding, a weird little legal twist is that if you find a former director or officer of that corporation, you can then go to them and say, hey, I want to buy your interest in this defunct corporation. And they'll say, okay, give me $10,000. Great. Now what they would do is they would then somehow they would go to court and say, hey, we actually own this land, put it in our name. And that's the submerged lands argument, where they say basically all the title that happened afterwards is illegitimate because that was the breach of title. And so there's a very big case going on right now. The chief judge of Broward County actually took the case. That's how big it is. And it's still ongoing. That's how at least our office was involved with the submerged lands issue.
It really helps that you're an attorney. Is that a requirement to be a Broward Property Appraiser, or it's just lucky for Broward County that our property appraiser is an attorney?
I really appreciate that. You know what? I love being a lawyer. My dad is my hero in this world. And, he was a lawyer and he was the mayor of Davie and the person who I aspire to be like the most. I had the privilege of going to Nova Southeastern Law School for a couple of reasons. One, I love Nova Southeastern. I love getting my law degree there. And it's only because I went there that I was able to meet my wife one day across the street at Valley Total Fitness, or else I would never have been there. So everything worked out. But being a lawyer, I think, for me at least, has helped me a lot. It helped me in the legislature, helped me on the county commission. It really helps me now.
I just want to be clear. It's not a job requirement to be an attorney to serve. We're just fortunate that you have that background because we've been talking about these issues, and it is about issue spotting. So you knew that was going to be a problem when this person reached out and said, I want all this property transferred into my name. It's been very helpful to me, when it comes to speaking with our lawyers and trying to work with them on it. But I will say this, the one thing I did realize, so as property appraiser, being a lawyer is really helpful. The one job, though, that I think makes all the jobs the best, what I would encourage more people to run for, if you ever run for the legislature and you are a former teacher, absolutely run for the legislature. Because here's what I've learned about that. When you have a job that needs consensus, when you're there with a whole lot of people, there is nothing better than teachers. And so I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about now, but if anybody ever wants to run for the state legislature, the state Senate, Congress, if you're a teacher, go for it because we need more teachers. We just had Representative Dan Daly on the podcast, and we will put the links to his episode in the show notes. But Dan mentioned how our Florida legislature, unfortunately, is really stocked up with two types of people, attorneys or wealthy people. So we don't have a lot of teachers and firefighters and paramedics because, first of all, they can't afford to take away that time, the 60-day session, to go up to Tallahassee. But also, these jobs don't pay the senators. And you would think for what they spend to actually get elected that it would pay, but it doesn't. So I guess to your point, it would have to be a former retired educator. I do want to give a big shout out to Dan. I think Dan Daly is a wonderful guy. And I can tell you, he works so hard for the people of Broward County. I'm very proud of Dan. His episode was incredible. I want to switch again. So there's some loans out there. So we've been talking about that all of these communities are going to, particularly the ones that are located along the coastline, they have some deferred maintenance projects that they now need to start undertaking. And some of them are looking at these types of loans that are tied to property taxes. I assume your office is dealing with this right now. Can you shed a little light on what these loans do? So I think, Donna, you're referring to the PACE program. And it is a program that I always tell everybody, it can be a benefit to you, but it also may not be a benefit to you. So you really want to do your homework to make sure you want to do it. And I'll explain why.
The state legislature allowed local governments to adopt what's called the PACE program, which is a financing program in their respective counties. The Broward County Commission did. And what it does is you have these private companies. The one I can think of off the top of my head would be Y-Green, for example. That's one of the PACE providers. And what they do is they provide the financing for you to, let's say, make your windows hurricane impact, or to harden your home, to do something to your property to make it better. And if you don't have the money available, maybe it's something you want to do, but really take a look at the contract that you're signing. The difference between this and a conventional type loan is that the PACE loan, it actually goes on your tax bill. And it is above your mortgage. So basically, if you owe your taxes and your PACE loan kind of get combined in there. And so if you do this, you'll notice in November when your tax bill comes out that you're going to have a pretty substantial increase to your property taxes. And the thing, it also acts as a lien on the property. So if you don't pay it off and you're paying interest on this, the interest rates can be big. If you don't pay it off and you sell your property, then at closing, this has to be paid off by you, or you're probably going to give a credit to the new owner and it's going to continue to run with the property. PACE providers also, from my understanding, I don't think they guarantee the work of the contractors. This I can't say 100%, but I believe I'm right up. And so I think what you'll find at times is somebody may knock on your door and they'll say, hey, do you want new windows in your home? And you say, that would be great. Well, I do that. There's a great financing program. And they'll give you a contract that's like this big. Read through the entire contract. I believe in the contract. It says that the PACE provider is not guaranteeing their work. And so you really have to do your due diligence on the contractors as well that do it.
Read the fine print, because again, it's going on your taxes. The loan goes on your taxes. And if you don't pay your taxes, we've already talked about what's going to happen.
Yes. And I know in November, our office and the tax collector's office is going to get many, many calls from residents who don't understand why their tax bill is so much higher. And then we're going to explain to them, well, you have a PACE lien on the property. That's where it's from.
You created an innovative title theft program called Owner Alert. How does that program alert property owners about title fraud? First of all, I should back up. What constitutes title fraud?
So unfortunately, South Florida is the title fraud capital of the world. You have some terrible people. I think they're criminals. What they do is they walk into the recording divisions for each county and they file fake deeds on people's properties. And they take those deeds and they try to extort people for money or a mortgage rent or even sell their property. And the reason it's so easy for them to do it is the recording divisions for every county have a ministerial duty. They have to accept whatever document is filed with them. So these criminals, they walk in, they file these fake documents, and they do something nefarious with it. And they do it all the time, and they profit in the millions upon millions of dollars. And what we wanted to do was give the people of Broward County the opportunity to fight the fraud before the fraud occurred. And so we actually developed about a year ago a program in-house. We spend no taxpayer dollars doing it, and it's free to the public. And it's basically called Owner Alert. So if anybody listening goes to web.bcpa.net/owner alert or to bcpa.net, which is our website, and click on Owner Alert, you can then sign up. And we ask you put your name in, and we ask you put your folio number in, which you can easily grab from our website. And we ask that you put your email address in. And if we have your email address on file, you're automatically verified. If we don't, we ask that you upload your Florida driver's license or Florida ID. If we don't have that, there are other ways for you to get verified as well. And then if any document, legitimate or not, is filed on your property changing ownership, you'll be notified almost instantaneously, so you can fight the fraud before the fraud has time to actually hurt you. And it is a great program. We've had about almost 180,000 Broward County property owners sign up so far. And my goal is to get every Broward County property owner to sign up, because they're to protect their most important asset, their home. This has been my big crusade. You know what? Unfortunately, I see what these people do, and sometimes they pick on the most vulnerable people in our communities, and they try to pick on whoever they feel they can easily get away with it. And so my goal is to let them know they're not welcome here. And if they do this, we're going to work very hard to put them in jail. And so recently, we've actually been working very closely with law enforcement to build criminal cases against people who are doing this. And we've actually been successful in a number of different prosecutions. We worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and we actually helped convict people who are going to have lengthy prison sentences for $12 million worth of property that they stole in Broward County and New York. We also work with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, where we helped convict two wives who stole millions of dollars of properties. And the way that they would work was one wife worked for one of the hospital district, the other wife worked in the real estate industry. And when somebody would pass on, the wife that worked for the hospital district would give that information to her wife that worked real estate industry. She would then take that information, find out if they own property here, and then find out if they had heirs heirs here. And if they didn't have heirs here and own property here, they would file fake deeds and steal the properties to the tune of millions of dollars. We also work with the
Wait, are these
Sheriff's Office.
people in jail?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good. Well done.
So, thank you very much. They were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison sentences. And fortunately, they're a married couple, but they're not going to be in the same prison. They're going to be in separate prisons. That same couple, we actually arrested on state charges as well for stealing properties in Cooper City. And the way that we got them in our office was we took away their homestead exemption, and they called and said, hey, you took away our homestead exemption. We said, okay, we'll come and we'll restore it. As soon as they came in, the Broward Sheriff's Office swarmed and arrested them. There are a number of criminal cases that we're working on. We actually entered into an interlocal agreement with the state attorney for Florida. His name is Harold Pryor, a wonderful guy who has really been so helpful in helping us build these cases to prosecute people. And actually this morning, I was at the Broward Sheriff's Office headquarters talking to their command staff and to the sergeants that are the ones in charge of these crimes for all the different districts of Broward County. And we're going to be working closely with them. And as I said at the beginning, my goal is to let every single one of these fraudsters, criminals know that they're not welcome in Broward County. And if they do this, we're going to work hard to make sure that they serve a long time in jail.
Well, it's a sad reality that there are people out there that are willing to commit these kinds of crimes. Yeah. When I conclude this episode, I'm going to make sure that my parents and my mother-in-law are registered. I mean, I imagine, listen, as you said, we have a lot of elderly people also in Florida, and they always seem to be the target of a lot of these fraudsters. But thank you so much for what you're doing. Hopefully this podcast episode is going to be listened to throughout the state, and other people are going to follow suit. I know that San Diego County said that they reached out. They're doing this, and they actually, I think, are going to call it owner alert as well, right?
They are. My view is any government agency that wants to copy our work, honestly, plagiarism is the best form of flattery. Any government agency that wants to adopt this program, we are more than willing to go and help them set it up because they're to protect their public. And actually, San Diego, I thought it was great. They actually reached out to me and they said, Marty, we love what you're doing. We want to model our program after yours. We want to call it Owner Alert. Is that okay? Go, absolutely. So I think it is a great thing. I am hoping every single governmental agency that deals with records in Florida and our country adopts a program like this because it's really there, again, to protect people's most important asset, which is their home.
Have any of the other 66 Florida counties, are they starting to use this system as well?
They have. There's been a few counties that have set it up so far. I have to give a big shout out. He's not the property appraiser, but my best friend on the face of the earth is the clerk of court for Palm Beach County. His name is Joe Abruzzo. If anybody from Palm Beach County is listening to this, trust me, this Joe is one of the greatest elected officials of all time. He actually has an owner alert program as well. I can't remember what he calls it, but it does essentially the same thing. And he's been working very hard to get Palm Beach County property owners to sign up. So if any document changing ownership is filed, they get notified instantaneously as well. He's the records custodian for Palm Beach County. That's why he does it. In Broward County, the clerk of court is not the record custodian. That's why we do it. In Miami-Dade, the clerk of court is the records custodian. So what they do, they don't have an email notification program, but they do alert people by mail if something has changed. And then you have other counties in Florida who are starting with an email alert. And truthfully, I will say this, the email alert is, I think, a better form of notifying somebody. I mean, notifying people anyway is very important. Like I said, in our office, we turn deeds around in basically 48 hours. So we're actually provided the records information, the deed information from the records division, basically that night. And so that night is when we're able to send out the email. And the reason it's so important is because it usually takes fraud some time to actually happen. Filing the initial false deed is just the beginning. It's the beginning because you have to take that false document and you have to mortgage the property, rent the property, sell the property. It could take some time. And so when you get notified instantaneously, you're able to see that something's occurred and you can take all the steps necessary so your title won't be clouded and you get everything fixed very, very quickly.
Marty, it's abundantly clear that your office is engaged on these issues.
Thank you.
And that's how you've been able to create a program like Owner Alert. So thank you.
I have to thank you again because, I love what you all allow me to do. And there's so much that our office can do to help the public. But the best way to reach people is when good people like yourself invite me to talk about what we do, because I know that after this airs, I'm going to get people to say, I listened to Donna's podcast. Marty, can you help me sign up for Homestead or Owner Alert or Portability? I mean, it is really great. So I just very much appreciate you.
Well, you're a problem solver, and I don't want to put one more thing on your plate, but we are in the midst of an insurance crisis in Florida, and I realize you're no longer serving in the House. You are serving in the role of Broward County Property Appraiser. But years ago, you recommended, you advocated for the creation of a publicly elected state insurance commissioner to help reform Florida's insurance industry. I will tell you, Marty, that I don't think I have a single client that hasn't contacted me in the last couple of months in a panic saying that their insurance premiums have gone up exponentially. And not only that, not only do they have to scramble to pay for it, but they can't even find the types and amounts of coverage that they need. So the publicly elected official didn't happen. Has anybody taken up the mantle for you?
I will say this, when it comes to insurance, that, as you know, is a huge issue for South Florida. Even myself, my insurance company went bankrupt, and it's a scary thing when all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, I have to find insurance within a month. And fortunately, we did find insurance, but it's going to cost us a lot more. Like, I'm going to have to come up with a pretty big check when my escrow shows me I'm short by about $4,000, next year. But I got insurance. That's happening with so many people. The rates are going up. People are being dropped. Citizens here in South Florida doesn't cover anything under $750,000 if you're Broward County or above for the structure. So it is a real difficult issue. I was very proud that the legislature did meet in a bipartisan way, and they did do some good reforms that we actually did also in 2008. I know they are beefing up the reinsurance market somewhat, which hopefully the reinsurance will be that savings. Basically, it allows in the Florida Catastrophe Fund, it allows the private insurance companies to buy reinsurance, do that at a cheaper rate, and then that's required, I believe, to be passed on to consumer. But there are other things as well. I would love to see an elected insurance commissioner. I just think that if somebody's elected, they're more answerable to the people, and they'd be more inclined to, I think, do the right thing when they know that the people have elected them and the people can unelect them.
It's affecting, it's impacting everyone who owns property in Florida, and hopefully it's going to be addressed soon.
It is. It really, really is.
Marty, what do you think is the most misunderstood part of your office's role?
So there are a few things. The first is I always tell people that I'm not the tax collector. I'm not the person that you write your checks to. I'm not the person that collects your taxes. I'm basically the one that assesses the value of the property and gives tax saving exemptions. And in Broward County, the reason that I think it's a little bit more misunderstood here is we don't yet have an elected tax collector. So almost every county in the state of Florida has a person that's the tax collector that's elected. In Broward, the tax collector is really a director that falls under county administration. So people don't know that who the tax collector is. So sometimes they think that I'm that person. But the good thing is in 2024, there'll be a new constitutional officer on the ballot, and that will be for tax collector in Broward County. So in 2024, when people go and vote in both August and November, they'll be voting for the person who they believe should be the Broward County's first tax collector. And I think at that time, people will have a better understanding as to who is responsible for collecting the taxes. So the other thing that I think at times is misunderstood is how much our office can do to help people, and that we're really just here to help people.
You're going to be a tough act to follow when you decide you no longer want to serve in this role. I mean it. And listen, you mentioned that your dad was the mayor of Davie, so you were exposed to public service at a very young age. You said you wanted to follow in your dad's footsteps. He was an attorney, he was the mayor. But what's next for you? I know you love this job and it's perfect for you, but Governor Kiar?
Well, you are so wonderful, Donna. What's amazing is I actually would love to stay in this job as long as you and everybody else allows me to do it. There was a time in the past, when I was younger, if there was an open congressional seat, I would have run for it in a heartbeat. But this job is so gratifying when it comes to helping people. As I said at the beginning, I've had the privilege of serving in a lot of capacities. I got to serve in the state legislature in Tallahassee. I got to serve on the county commission and as the mayor. But this job is way different than all those other jobs. And I think almost every other elected job, because it's so tangible when it comes to helping people. Every single day, I'll be in my office and I'll help a senior sign up for a low-income senior exemption. Or I get to tell a veteran, hey, because of your service, you no longer have to pay property taxes. It just feels so good. And so for me, the one thing I could say 100% certain is I would love to do this job and this job alone for as long as you and everybody else allows me to do it.
Well, okay, then I think you should be prepared to be doing this job for a very long time. With that, you've been so generous with your time. I just want you, I know you mentioned throughout the episode where people can contact your office, but if you could just one more time let people know the various places they can contact you, Marty.
So there are a few ways that people can contact our office. The easiest way is to email me. I answer my emails all day, every day. My email address is martykiar@bcpa.net. That's MartyKiar@bcpa.net. You can also call me directly at 954-357-6930. That's my direct line. You can also come down to our office at 115 South Andrews Avenue, room 111. And if you can't make it there, you can go on our website at bcpa.net and schedule a virtual visit where our staff members will jump on there with you and they'll help you sign up on the spot for exemptions and help you with your property. You can also go on our website and we have every single exemption application online, so you can just file it there, including portability. And also, as I said before, we have a very aggressive MEET team, mobile exemption education team. My wife actually came up with the name. And what they do is they take our office to the public every single day. And if you go on our website, you can click on events and you can see exactly where they'll be. We're in city halls, we're in parades, we're in events, we're in your community all the time. You can sit down with our staff members. Their computers are connected to our internal servers and they can sign you up for anything. And the other way that we can also help you is if you are homebound. If you're in your house and you can't get out, we actually have a homebound team that actually go to your house. They'll set their computer up and they'll sign you up for tax saving exemptions and help you with your property on the spot as well. You just have to call and make an appointment.
Marty, you are the most helpful elected official I've ever spoken to. So I want to thank you for joining us on Take It to the Board today. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow and rate us on your favorite podcast platform or visit takeittotheboard.com for more ways to connect.